Good morning, everybody. A warm welcome to the Graphisoft Collaborative Design Studio and the Archicad Design Challenge 2.0. I thank all the colleges and students who have taken the effort for joining us today from their respective college rooms. This second edition, we had the first edition last year. This second edition focuses on design computation as we explore the transformative power of technology and delve into the principles of building, information modeling, and parametricism. Parametric design is revolutionizing our approach to architecture, enabling us to create more adaptive, efficient, and innovative structures. You will engage through the studio with Graphisoft experts from around the world, pushing the boundaries of design and contributing to groundbreaking solutions in architecture. AceEdge, our e-learning platform from Ethos, is playing the role of the hosting hands and the creative mind of this challenge. Since its inception in August 2018, and it's going to be 6 years this month, on 15th of August, AceEdge has provided invaluable resources and insights in architecture, construction, engineering, and design. With over 200 courses and events, our platform connects learners from across South Asia and even beyond, fostering creativity and innovation. We are pleased to inform you that yesterday we launched a studio called Reimagining Urban Centers. And today we launch our 16th collaborative studio with a focus on housing. We believe technology is one of the ways forward. Through AceEdge, we bridge the gap between theory and practice, equipping architects and designers to face the ever-changing industry with confidence and skill. Together, we've eagerly joined today to hear about the design processes at Sami Padora and Associates. And I thank Vami Koticha, partner at SPNA, for joining us. Following her presentation, we will have a demonstration of the playscape of Archicad with your technical mentor, architect Sandor Bali. But first, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce you to your design mentor and a very dear friend, Dvaipayan Chakravarti. Dvaipayan
Is there a connectivity issue from Geeta's end, or is it just me?
I think it's from Geeta's end because
Right. Geeta's end.
She
All
froze
right.
up when she said my name.
Right, yes. I think I'll take the opportunity of introducing you, Dvaipayan. DC, as he's fondly called by many who are close to him, including Geeta. He's an architect and an urban designer and is the junior partner at VKA Architecture in Pune. He's an alumnus of the TVB School of Habitat Studies.
Sonam, I'm back. I'm not sure if you heard any bit. I'm sitting in the hills, so pardon me, but I'm not sure if you heard the part where I spoke about DC and me meeting on our lawns.
No, we didn't.
No, you didn't. So DC and I go back close to 2 decades. And Vaipayan and I remember we were 20 years younger, and he had just about graduated or was still in college. And I had just moved into Kolkata, and we would meet on our lawns talking about solving the problems of the world. But yes, I'm going to formally introduce him as well. He's an architect and an urban planner, a junior partner at VKA Architecture in Pune, an alumnus of TVB School of Habitat Studies in Delhi, one of the finest of its times. After which he completed his post-graduation from SPA Delhi in urban design in 2005. DC uses his experience in handling complex, large-scale projects through a site-sensitive, economically responsive, and well-coordinated approach. He enjoys personally focusing on elaborating the planning narrative as a critical component of design evolution. He prefers balancing an architect's role as a profession with academics. Vaipa is the secretary of IUDI, I think, Institute of Urban Designers India, Pune, and often takes workshops in some of the leading schools of architecture of our country. I will now welcome Vaipayan to say a few words and hand it over to Avneet to take the show ahead. All over to you, DC. Have fun.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Geeta, the ASAGE, and Graphisoft for actually providing this opportunity. You're in a lovely place in Kunnur. I'm sitting in my car baking myself because I decided to keep the AC off so that we have better silence. I was supposed to reach the office by 11, but I apologize for the delay. So I think this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I'm really excited to be interacting. Sonam told me that there's close to about, so there are 10 institutes with about 20 students each. So that's 200 students. Um, and one of the items that is part of my agenda is that I'm supposed to be inspiring the students. And I told Sonam, wow, that's a lot of pressure on me because I think as architects, we do the best that we can do with our world. And passing on the baton on to the younger generation is a responsibility that, as we grow in the years and experiences, that is what we try to do. This is an excellent effort where we are actually looking at concepts of parametricism and my own experience that we have with let's say large scale developments, including housing projects, township projects, of practically conceptualizing, executing it, and probably being a part of the entire planning process of all these developments. A lot of my work is in and around Pune, but I am well aware of a lot of the development that is happening across the country. So it's extremely exciting to see that we have students from various parts of India tuning in, and I really really hope that we could be we would be interacting closely. I think there are quite a few sessions lined up where we will be taking up design discussions. Now, I was actually wondering that, why in the first place, when I kind of thought that when the concept of parametricism and, everything that Geeta Di was kind of really talked about right in the beginning. And of course, all of you who are tuned in are already part of the process where you've actually Googled itself, Googled yourself as to what all these aspects are, where computational modeling can take you. Building information modeling is just one aspect of it. And you probably would have seen the works of Schumacher, of Hadid, and so many people who have taken parametricism to a completely different, what should I say, stratosphere. And yet merging many of these concepts on ideations into something as practical and day to day as, let's say, some of the projects that we end up doing is a challenge in itself. Uh, I realized that parametricism as an idea when it was first of all conceptualized, uh, or let's say kind of that entire avant-garde movement that kind of really kind of brought about that idea together. Uh, it talked about parameters, it talked about fractal geometries, it talked about mathematical modeling of units, which would then expand, and very often they have tended in architecture to be a sort of a visual facade, an experiential an envelope to the building. And so there is materiality, there is technology, there is a technology backing that entire system up of parametricism. But as architects, very often, if I get into the very rudimentary aspects of what parametricism could be, as architects, whether you're designing a small bungalow or designing and planning a large complex housing scenario, or perhaps a kind of a civic public building in the middle of Delhi, we are constantly inundated with various parameters that we have to modulate within our own head. That is our fundamental work as an architect. Uh, we look at user needs, we look at site, we look at multiple subcomponents of the site, we look at economics, we look at legislation, we look at materials, and seriously, the amount of parameters and the prioritization that you actually end up doing as an individual architect based on the same set of parameters is what really singles each of you architects out independently. That bias that knowledge that each architect, each of the 200 of you will actually bring into this design is what will set you apart as an architect. So my quest to you while engaging in this entire forum is to not look at parametricism just as a facade, just as a mathematical product driven by technology, but to look at all the parameters which inform the design. See if you can look at modern day technologies, tools to kind of extrapolate that into something interesting. And at the absolute essence of it, ensure that this entire exercise is not an ego exercise for an architect to showcase what you can do because you've been given a concept, but all the parameters that are put into place, all the ideation that is put into place is for the benefit of the actual user or users of each specific unit, whether you're looking at housing and all those kind of typologies, the end user, the people who will occupy that space that you are conceptualizing for the next 30, 40 years are benefited from this process. So that is something that I will be probably constantly reminding you as we go through the entire, let's say, these processes with all the colleges through the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Architect Devine. We have a lot to learn from you, and we look forward to our interactions. I would now like to welcome Architect Vami Koticha to the screen. Vami is one of the principals at Sameep Padora and associates along with Sameep and Aparna. Vami is a graduate of the Kamla Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture in Mumbai, has over 15 years of experience in designing and building some of the studio's most recognized projects. He has been instrumental in projects such as the Maya Sumaya Library, the first Indian building to be actually awarded Arc Daily's Building of the Year, and the Udan Low Income Housing Project, recognized by a HUDCO National Prize. Her work on Jettawan also received a citation at the Merit List Awards in Goa. As the design head of the studio, Vami's expertise spans from design conception to site execution. Her current projects include a boutique hotel in Goa, a cricket club in Chennai, and the interiors of an urban hotel in Mumbai. She is particularly skilled in reconceptualizing traditional typologies and construction methodologies through computational software, embodying her design philosophy, do more with less. I will now invite Vami to the screen and request our participants and faculty members to actively input their questions in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Avni. Good morning, everyone. What a unique platform to speak at. Students, practitioners, and faculty all coming together. Very interesting. Thank you for having me, Sonam and Geeta, and sharing our studio work with these young, inspiring minds today. Given the context of this studio and the brief that I have, I'm going to share some of our work through the lens of parametricism today. But before that, I know you will ask me, what is parametricism? And if you were to Google it, I'm sure you will say that it's a term that was coined by Patrick Schumacher back, I think, in 2008, 2009. And since then, this term has multivalent interpretations. For us, for some, it'll be about maybe, finding the form exploration. So it's probably like richness of expression or endless forms of nature or structural form finding. Maybe a controversial terminology would be computationally powered architecture. For some, it is about, setting up a discipline of analysis or organizing processes or setting up frameworks and working within them and incorporating feedback loops. And more interpretations of that could be about material intelligence or about pushing boundaries and redefining boundaries when it comes to hybrid structures. For us, all of this falls under parametric thinking. Parametricism is what we call as parametric thinking. And in our opinion, this is not something that is new. It is not something that started in 2008. Parametric thinking has always been around. Architecture, great architecture has always been around. It has always been about being being contextual, or being aware of its social and economic and cultural response that it needs to have. What one needs to understand, however, is that parametricism is not about inventing new shapes or innovative shapes that look exuberant and unexpected. It also doesn't mean that every form that emerges out of parametricism has to be this smooth and undulating surface made up of these small, gradually changing cells. And don't get me wrong, these results are more often than not very, very dazzling. But architectural form cannot be the sole parameter of a project. It is about consciously engaging in that formal exploration with performative concerns. It's about, and these performative parameters that you set out are cultural, social, economical, regional, climatic, programmatic context. So for us, all of those parameters is what comes under the umbrella of parametric thinking. So now, given that context that I've said, I have kind of picked a few of our projects to briefly kind of touch upon this very, very vast topic and a very strongly ingrained ethos that our studio works with. Each kind of project addresses a couple of these parameters that I spoke about. So this one particularly talking about material intelligence and hybrid systems. What you see here is a beautiful garment. Yes, of course. It's a picture of a garment that is done with a local craft from the region of Kutch, I believe. It's mirror applique work on a textile. What is generated here is a garment that is soft flowing because of the textile, because of the nature of the textile that is being used. But at the same time, it gets its form and its structure from the mirror work on it. Now, taking this principle ahead, we've worked with veneer and canvas. What it does is the canvas gives you the flexibility of that textile, and the veneer modules that we've come up with gives it the form and the rigidity that it needs to have, the structure that it needs to have. So what's happening here is the tension and the curvature in this new hybrid material was a derivative of the size of the module that is used on that screen. So once we have that principle kind of set in, we apply it across the entire kind of surface. And this is where your kind of software tools come into picture. And it starts generating these various modules for us and breaking it down into something that is buildable and something that is possible to fabricate given the resources and the skill sets that we have, including points of where it will be suspended from, and hence the kind of form that it will take. So the tighter or the smaller the module, the tighter the curvature. And that's the feedback loop that we kind of plugged in. And then, of course, various drawings are made to always kind of simplify your entire process into something that is buildable and something that can be explained to a local contractor, given the context that we work with. And what you end up getting is actually like almost like a hybrid structure of like a veneer cloud floating above. Yeah, like you can see various cells over there and various sizes of the cellular nature of that hybrid fabric that we've come up with. And it maintains its rigidity because of the form that it has, because of the modules that are used. Pushing this forward, how can we work? I mean, you're working in the context of Bombay, okay? So you are short of time and you're short of money. I mean, I think that's a given in every single project that we start with. So here we are working with a space that had to be turned around very, very quickly. What are your contexts? Okay, you just start working with your beams and columns and very regular, very, very, something that every project will have. So you start kind of maximizing heights wherever possible. You start plugging in your infrastructure, like your HVAC systems and grills and all of that. And given with all those constraints, you come up with this so-called surface, which gives you maximum heights. But we don't want it to be just a surface. So what are the other parameters that this space needs? This space needed, like I mentioned, AC grills. It needed to maximize height. It needed to also have an entry experience on the right side. It also needed to be self-supporting. It also needed to be a kit of parts, because I don't have this space for a very long time. I need to fabricate all of this out of sight and come here and plug and play. So, and at the same time, it also needs to be a retail display of some of the products that the space needs to showcase. So when you plug in all of that, what we come up with is this infrastructure cage that really becomes the soul of the project, that inhabits everything, whether it's lighting, whether it's HVAC, whether it's the entry experience, whether it's the structure to hold it in place. So all of this put together, again, using your computational tools, breaking it down into processes that are possible to execute, because you don't want to build something that is conceptually so difficult that you can't execute it at the same time. Just showing you these images to see how, all of this gets kind of, I don't want to say dumbed down, but gets simplified to the level at which it is possible to execute. And then you end up coming with this. So this is now my infrastructure cage, which also holds my retail display on the left side, like you can see, and on the right side, as you can see, it also holds the AC grills, all our infrastructure, all our lighting. And at the same time, all of this is not built on site. It is only assembled on site. So it's cut separately, it's CNC cut, and then it's assembled on site very, very quickly, minimizing the amount of work that needs to be done on site, and thus adhering to your tight timelines and cost constraints and all of that. It's like a kit of parts. It's almost like adult Lego, if I were to say. It comes in different pieces and you plug and play and you put it together on site. Now taking this forward, and at Studio, we love tinkering. I mean, I think that is what makes it super interesting for us. We look forward to waking up each day and coming to the studio because there's a new challenge and there is something new that we're trying to kind of work with. And back in 2014, we see a lot of these cool, innovative things happening and feedback loops being set up. So we start tinkering. We start using the Arduino board, and we start using. We go back to our roots and we plug in not just architecture, but our learnings from electronics and physics and everything together, and seeing and working with sensors and seeing what can come up with that. Just a sec, let me play this. So like you can see here, what's happening is because she's cutting the sensor, she's activating the sensor, and then that's resulting in some change on the screen. So at this point, we were actually invited to do an exhibition for Rahul Malhotra at the State of Architecture. And I believe some of you must have visited at the NGMA here in Bombay. And we said, of course, it's great. And he was going to curate the kind of content that was going into the exhibition. So I'm like, obviously we were like, people will be here to see the content. But what if the way the content is displayed itself becomes a tool? It itself becomes a point of exhibition. That itself is a spectacle that people will come here to see, to experience. Can it be tactile? Can people come here to feel that? And we said, why does the exhibition need to be so static? Why does it need to be so unidimensional? Can it have the fourth dimension to it of responsiveness, of some kind of a feedback loop? So we come up with these origami folds and this paper to work with, and every time a person passes by, the sensor gets activated and it opens up and it displays some information that is not seen at the macro level. So as you go closer, that thing opens up and it surprises you with some new piece of information. So these are some of the drawings to explain how the origami folds kind of work. This is the front side at the top, and this is the back side. What you see, they were these kind of MDF crosses that we came up with as a module to keep that fold in place and allow it to move front and back. This is what the entire assembly box kind of looked like. So these are our electrical boards, the Arduino boards, the gears, the physics of that entire movement coming in and out. opening and closing almost like a flower petal. And yes, it was extremely challenging because you're working. I mean, this is not something that we're trained to do. We're not trained to do this, but it was beautiful. It was such an interesting learning experience to bring all of our interests together: the physics, the electronics, the paper, the origami, the display, the tactile nature of it together, come up with, systems to how to make the paper stand out there, given these were our assembly boxes, these were our various layers of the entire display that we did. These are some of the images of work in process. This is the framework that went behind it. This is the way the paper was kind of folded. There are two kinds of folds, like you can see over here. This is a type A and a type B, depending on the way it's supposed to open and close. So just a sec. And then this is what the eventual kind of exhibition looked like. You have the display of the images over here, each project displayed in each cell. This is what the entire exhibition kind of looked like. Eventually, there were more kind of partitions in the center, but this is what formed the entire perimeter of the ring of the MGMA and the topmost level. And I'm just going to show you a video of how that kind of worked. So people were very intrigued by how this was moving and what was happening, and people kept playing with they kept going back and forth and keep triggering the sensors. And we got a lot of feedback, as it was such an interesting experience. Like people said that they always went through the exhibition once to see the content, and then second time to just kind of play with this entire tactile nature of the exhibit. And eventually the entire thing was packed and kind of given for recycling. And this is it. This is the entire exhibition sitting on one wheel cart. Moving to now more kind of form-finding projects, okay? And which is what I know everybody loves to hear about, parametricism. Is structural efficiency, but at the same time with low-tech solutions. So here we are working on a building in Hyderabad, and Hyderabad had some beautiful, beautiful brick coming from that region. And we said we want to kind of work with this brick as a structural element and eliminate the necessity of any kind of RCC that is required on the facade. So all your chajjas and all your window sills and your beams are eliminated at that point. Only the horizontal spanning structures are in RCC. So how can that brick wall, I mean, it's great. Yes, we can make load-bearing brick walls, but at the same time, I don't have that kind of space that we used to have 100 years back where I could make 2 feet deep walls. So how do I work with this module and still make it structural and still have all my weather shade elements and chajjas and sills and jalis and all of that, keeping in mind that I have minimum volume and minimum area to occupy. This is what we eventually kind of came up with as a first iteration, that, okay, you know what if I just turn my brick like that and then it'll support my stone chajja. So this horizontal gray line that you see is a stone piece. Again, Hyderabad, as you must be knowing, has beautiful granite that comes out of there. So you have these large, thick slabs of granite that can be used. We worked with the masons out there and trying to kind of figure out a way to explain this to them. We did make a lot of drawings as well for each course drawings and drawings at each level and explaining to them how this needs to work. But at the same time, we realized that this is not enough. You know, if you go back to what the role of an architect was, let's say during the Brunelleschi's time and when he made the Florence Dome out there, he was called the master builder, not just the architect of that dome, right? So what he did was, while they found it difficult to get that material up, he also designed the tools to make that happen. A very low-tech tool of combining a vertical and a horizontal gear to take that material up. Similarly, we ended up designing our tools that we needed to provide our masons with so that they could understand these various angles that they needed to place the bricks at. sometimes a drawing was not enough to convey that. So where I'm coming from is that, sometimes innovation, yes, necessity is the mother of all innovation, but even frugality is. Because I don't have the tools and the access to those kind of technology where I can 3D route and do 5-axis routing. I mean, of course I have, but at what cost? And is there a way that we can use these software tools or these parametric tools to enhance the skill set of a daily worker? Can parametricism be kind of looked upon as a way to redefine boundaries of this latent resources that we have lying within a resourceful country, a rich country of artisans and craft like India? So adapting adopting passive systems and learning from the vernaculars of the world is what we try to achieve in this project. So eventually what we did, because of just empowering the masons with a simple tool like that, helped them understand the way that entire support had to be done. And eventually we ended up doing windows like this, which is your main load bearing wall, but at the same time it turns to allow for that weather shade to happen. And this is what eventually the building kind of looked like. These were all bay windows that were set in, and these are all your granite sill members. And then another kind of example of structural form finding was the Sharda School Library. Okay, and here we were. It was such an interesting kind of program, right? Like, architecture is about experience. It's not just about the visual. It's also about what emotion it evokes within you when you're in that space. Architecture is beyond just providing like a shelter or the roof over your head, right? The challenge is, can architecture influence lifestyle? And it does, right? I mean, knowingly, unknowingly, and it's not in your hands and you're not able to control it, but it is influencing your lifestyle. So here, when you are kind of working in interior parts of Maharashtra for a very ordinary, regular school for primary kids, and you are to build a library for them, it's not just about building that one room and giving it to them. It is about encouraging them to come to that library every day, making it a part of their lifestyle, making it a part of their learning, a part of their education tool moving forward. There were two highlights, in our brief when we were speaking to our clients for this project, that how can this structure be inspiring for kids, and how he was actually referencing that how he remembered in his childhood that he would sit with books under a tree, and that would be like his most favorite place to read, rather than sitting in a library with probably tall volumes and tall windows and tall shelves where one can't reach. He specifically said that I don't want an intimidating space. So when we started thinking about this more, we said it was very clear that the placement of the library, we needed to be in a way that here on the down south was the main playground. This is the main school building. This is the secondary, like a smaller kids school building. And we said this is the way to the playground. So it has to be a part of their daily commute. Every day, the kids from here, number 2 and number 3, they leave from here and they go to the playground to 6. So I'm like, we said, let's plug it in here at this point. Other thing, we were like, what do kids engage with? Okay. As a child, I remember, and as a new mother also, actually now I can see that kids engage with music before they actually engage with words. They engage with smell before they engage with the visual. They engage with landscape before they engage with architecture. Truthfully, if you have a mound like this and a mother and a child are walking past by, the mother will walk from the side, but the child is going to go over the mound and come down. And that's that innate nature to engage with landscape before anything else. It's a form of play for them. So what happens is we start experimenting again and tinkering again, and we start working with different things that can give us not just a form like this, but something playful, something that kids would engage with, something that is an extension of the landscape, not really architecture. I don't want to define it as architecture yet. We again, coincidentally within this project, I'm talking about brick, but here it's about a brick tile. And we said, how can we push this material to its utmost efficiency as far as structure is concerned? It's a brick tile. Mind you, I'm talking about a 20 brick tile. And what can we do with this to make it, to push it to its structural efficiency? So now here we start studying, and we can start going back and seeing how, Catalan bolts were made in Spain, and so there is this, there was a structural engineer called DSA who used to work in Uruguay, I think. And he had this great technique of tying those brick members together. And, even if you go to the New York subways, over there you have the Spain Catalan bolting system that was done. Gustavino was the engineer who did that, and this is back in, like, I think the 16th century, if I'm not mistaken. The Eladio Diaz from Uruguay worked in the 1960s. We found a software that was developed at ETH in Spain, in Switzerland, ETH, the University ETH in Switzerland, called the Rhino Volt. So what they were doing is they were working with a software that would be completely stable under compressive forces. So what we are doing is we are now combining a software that's made in Switzerland, working with the tiles that are locally made out there in India, working with two techniques borrowing from Spain and from Uruguay. And it was such a beautiful process to just keep joining these dots. Like, one thing led to the other, one thing led to the other. Like, and you don't know what the end product is looking like. You don't want to know. You want to discover it through this process. It's not like, oh, today morning we wake up and say, oh, this is what I want to do. No, we want to find the process of discovery is what was very interesting, and seeing how all these various things came together in this new definition of kind of globalization, as we say. So this is what the kind of form looked like. This is the software called Rhino Volt that we were working with. So these are your stress diagrams. You input your closed edges, so where your load transfer is happening. All the other edges are your open edges where load transfer is not allowed to happen. They have to be self-supporting and self-spanning. And then you put in various such parameters. I'm not getting very technical right now. And it comes to this. We start with our small scale experiments, of course. I mean, just because it's there in a software doesn't mean, we still need to figure out a way to make it. Like I said, at the end of the day, we have to simplify it such that it's contextual to the resources that we have access to. So these are various ways of doing form work. Like you can see, this was a much smaller scale. We could afford to do it in ply like this and get the form, and then try out various ways of cladding it with bricks, and to the point that where it would break. And there are two different ways that we tried. Eventually, scaling that up, this is what the floor plan kind of looked like. What you see here, these 5 lines are where the 5 points where the load transfers happen, where the volt kind of comes down and touches the ground. All the other curved edges are open. The way it nestles in between two existing buildings, and the way it kind of starts framing these smaller playgrounds for the smaller kids. That was the intent. And here is the main building. So you have your main access from here. And this is what the section kind of look like. So that you see over here, the 2 pedestals is because you are cutting it through those load transfer, the closed edges. And then here are the open edges. Some more technical details of how we then figured out that we needed to not do a single layer of brick, but do 3 layers of bricks. All 3 layers of 3 bricks are in 3 different directions, horizontal, vertical, and then angular, so that you get your joints that are completely staggered. With a membrane in the middle, which is your geotextile membrane for waterproofing. So this is now with 0 steel, so no steel, no reinforcement, just brick and membrane and mortar to keep the brick in place. Eventually, we finally succeeded at the smaller scale of the volt. Like you can see, we were ready to risk our lives with it. We were ready to stand on it, and we were fine. We are all here. So then came the challenge of doing it, executing it on site. So here we are now trying to plot all these points in the most kind of a low-tech way of X, Y, and Z plotting. And then comes the next challenge of doing the form work. Now, we don't have the money to spend to do platform work. That's not something we could afford. So what else? What is the best other way? We said, let's do a kind of reinforcement mesh over it. This reinforcement will eventually be taken out once the brick tiles are set in place and then be used at another site. So, because if I were to do this in ply, a lot of wastage, can't reuse the ply again, and the curvatures to anyways get curvatures in ply would be difficult. So mesh and like a reinforcement mesh seems like the most kind of obvious way to go about it. So this is what that reinforcement mesh looks like. This is the first layer of tile being put up by the very, very regular skilled masons. This is what 3 layers of brick tiles look like. That's what thinner is. And here is where you still have all those points that were plotted. And eventually the whole thing was kind of de-shuttered like that. So that reinforcement cage is gone. The bamboos are gone. And this is what the vault finally looked like. Now, this is about 125 feet long and 40 feet wide this way. About 5,000 square feet is the habitable area. And then all the furniture and everything else only started sprouting from our plinth. This vault remains untouched, and it only gets pinned with windows on all these sides to close the space. This is what the vault looks like without the windows. And eventually we added the windows as well. And the windows was again a geometrical exercise to resolve the curvature, because again, we don't have the access to going with curved glasses and large pieces of glasses and curved framework, which can cost 2x the money. So just breaking down the curves into simple geometry, using geometry always as a tool to kind of come up with innovative solutions. So here, what I want to highlight is that what has happened is, what I really think is symbolic of this project is that we're not only looking at history as the origins of all these technologies and then merely copying that technology. Okay, this is how it was done, and so this is how we are doing it today. But using that as an inspiration to now replicate those old methods, but with a modern approach, and kind of marrying them with the new age software tools that you have. So you're being able to push that idea further to get the learnings from the history and adopting the new technology of today and leveraging all the access that you have, access to knowledge that you have, leveraging that with the networks that we sit in today. So when all of this comes together, the output is such, it's almost as romantic as the process in itself, and we are learning not only lessons from various geographies, like I explained, the Spain or the Uruguay or the Switzerland, but also through various histories and various time periods, right? And yeah, that's what that project has meant to us. And at the end, I'm just going to end it, yes, with a video that recently somebody shared it with us from the school who had gone, and this is what was happening with the kids out there. We've been told that the teachers now come and tell us that kids ask us to do their lectures now in the library. So it's no longer just a library, but they insist that we don't want to sit in this classroom, ma'am, can we go and do the lecture in the library? So this is where we feel that the success of this project kind of lies, where it is about inspiring and evoking a certain emotion, a certain lifestyle, and just an example of how the influence of architecture goes beyond just a building or a shelter, but also the ecosystem that it kind of gets plugged into. And this ecosystem of various parameters, whether it is social, economic, cultural, frugality, or climate response, or programmatic adjacencies. And with that, I would just like to end with this quote by Farshid Musavi, and she says it so well, that it is imperative that we cease perceiving architecture as only matter or plastic art and revisit parametric thinking after our distraction with parametricism and its seg into formal extravagance. And yeah, with that, I think I would like to end this lecture. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Vami. I think this was so awe-inspiring. I mean, introduction to the possibilities in parametricism and the grounded contextual way in which you explore design solutions, I think we were all in for a treat, and it was really good. Like, everyone considers computational tool to be about math, to be about numbers, something that is also very technical. So although everyone loves it because of the design and the way it comes out, it still is a jargon that many do not are yet to decipher. But I must say that you simplified this so well to talk about not just the design element, which is very visual, right? But you also discussed services, utility, execution. It was a very holistic approach, the discussion about the context of like, towards the end, you also mentioned how the kids are using it beyond the perception and imagination of the architect as well. And you also did not, you shared and you spoke about the fun in design. You called it the adult Lego when you're exploring these things. And that indeed, it kind of makes design a playscape. And I must say, you're such a good teacher. You really like simplified the most complex of designs and demystified parametricism for us all. I'm sure the students are all starry-eyed and they may have some questions for you. But
Thank you.
but I thought I could begin with a few that came into me in the personal note.
Sure.
One is that parametricism is a newly evolved term, right? And design discovery through parametricism is really the future of architecture, if of one kind of architecture. But as it is the future, we noticed that your work also respects the past. With the Maya Somaya library as well, you did not reinvent the wheel and you went back to the Catalan vault, but you looked at softwares and systems that could help you execute that idea. I think it is a very important lesson for students in the audience here, that modernism is believed, when we were taught modernism, we talked about celebrating industrialization of design, and we said that, machines are here and we need to learn from it. Those were the words of Le Corbusier and others. And then suddenly postmodernism, including the works of some of our Indian masters, we do revere history. And we do revere these lessons from the past. So could you share with us that how do you begin your design? Like, I'm sure it begins with the intent of being unique, being true to the problem that has been put forward to you. Yet, how do you stay grounded? Can you share a few words on the philosophy of the practice?
Sure. So, Sonam, I think exactly like what you said, we don't start off the project with, oh, today I dreamt of a circular building, let's do a circular building. No. I think when we begin a project, we don't know what we want to do. We don't know what it is going to look like. We want to discover it through that process, through a very, very rigorous process. And like I mentioned, we incorporate and we take that discipline of analysis very, very seriously. We set our frameworks in the beginning, that what is it that we're trying to achieve in this project. And then, of course, allow for all these external parameters to reshape it, to remold it. Like they say, there's a lightness in being adaptive. So that is always our process, that we are adapting. We're constantly adapting. To answer your question, now more than ever before, whether it comes to sustainability or cultural, not cultural, but ecological context that we're sitting in, sustainability is not just a tick mark. Like, it's not something that gets added. Okay, ho gaya. Like, okay, the three things I've incorporated and it's done. I think it becomes the ethos of the approach that we even begin the project with. So once we have this framework set in, our rigorous research, our research into whether that is looking at the past or looking at cutting edge technology, and sometimes both of them coming together, is where I think our solution lies. And pretty much we always find a solution within that. So I hope that answers.
Yes, and in fact, in one of my conversations with Sameep, I also remember this whole, like, the Udan project that you worked on. It did not begin with the design of the project. It began with a book It
Yes.
becomes an exhibition that you kind of shared with the community on housing that got compiled into a book. You put together your lessons and then you began with the discussions on design. And I think that is a really valuable lesson that all the students for sure can take back. We have a question from Dwaipayan here. Dwaipayan, can you
Sonam, since I may head out, just a quick question for Vami, since there are so many students. I mean, DC will be here for till the end. I have to leave. So since there are so many students here, I was just wondering if you were to look at it from their lens, the scale of the project is also, something that needs to be looked at. And I'm sure you started at a smaller scale at some point in time. How do you start envisioning your design philosophy and approach at a smaller scale and then allow it to grow to the scale that you've grown today?
So I think, Geeta, here, even currently, when we are approached with a project, our first question is not the scale, but the challenge. And whether, and it's always about the innovation that can come in the process of solving or addressing that challenge. So even as students, I believe that as long as we are in that discipline of discovery, I think the scale should not matter. You don't need to be limited by that. Your limitation is only your imagination. And in fact, I think, I really believe, and even at our studio, if you ever come, the energy that the young minds bring is so contagious that it can do wonders. It can definitely, it's not limiting by in any ways. I mean, yes, experience is great, but in fact, experience sometimes can be more limiting than energy. So,
my question was precisely for you to, address that to this audience.
Yes. No, so I think, which is where, which is what my intent with this presentation was, to debunk this whole myth about grasshopper or rhino or, these large parametric gestures, which is what I spoke about, that it's not about these exuberant forms. It's really about what parameters you are setting for yourself, and then how are you in your process, whichever way, whether your process is a grasshopper or whether it's a low-tech process of finding your own tools to make that happen, how are you achieving the parameters that you set out to achieve? So I think there is no need for any kind of fear of addressing the unknown. I think it's about just going for it.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta.
Thanks, Swami. Dwaipayan, are you able to unmute yourself? If not, I will ask the question.
No, I am able to unmute myself. There was all this chatter in the office which I was trying to ignore. Vami, amazing presentation. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think you hit my brief where you're supposed to kind of inspire everyone. I think there's a wonderful work happening there at SPA, and I think it was really nice to see all that work being done. My question to you, which I actually put in the chat box, was that I know that a lot of the work that you have, let's say, borrowed from, let's say, these ideas from from all these parameters, all these mathematical programs. Some of them are using some amount of software and ideation. One of the aspects that you talked about, that of course you're not able to kind of work, you're having to contextualize it with local budgets, local materials. We're not able to have membranes and materials and costs associated with such projects that we get to see in other, let's say, nations. So how do you factor in the margin of error that comes from humans? I mean, I saw all that simplicity that you actually had, where you mark the X, Y, Z. So that is each individual wooden or bamboo piece. I couldn't really make out that was cut to particular size, and only when every single aspect of all those elements are working together does it really become structurally stable that you can bet your life on it. So how do you really factor in that human aspect? Do you also work in training the contractors and the labor, or do you get your hands dirty yourself and really kind of be a part of the process?
Yeah, so recontextualize, exactly. So that's what we try to do constantly. We keep simplifying it to a level where we think it is possible to convey this to the local artisans and the skill set that we have. If that is not possible, the challenge is not achieved or it's not solved. High-tech solutions are plenty and probably easy sometimes. Where it gets so-called Indianized, the Indians, the Jugaad, the Chandrayaan, which is what we do, which is what we recontextualize it to a level where we are able to explain that to the contractors. As far as margin of error is concerned, I think I think your question is about this particular project. Then we had it tested multiple times, like you saw it in the pictures also. And we got it tested by the guys who had developed the software, and we worked with them as well, and some other structural engineers also. So we did a lot of brick tests, the brick tile test, because it needed to be of a certain compressive strength, because the entire structure is stable only on compressive forces. So yes, we do factor in all of that, just like we would in any other regular structure. You would get it peer tested or peer analyzed. So similar processes. I think just the question that is under consideration is different, but this very similar process.
Thank you. Thanks, DC. Thanks, Vami. There's one last question that we have, and this is from a faculty member in the audience. They've understood your design process, but they want you to share with the students, how do you begin with the design? Like, do you begin with sketching, or do you directly begin working on the drafting tool? Or because most of the projects that you showed us rely so heavily on geometry that it needs to be set right. You need to work on iterations. So can you give us a peek into this design flow?
So I think we have multiple start points. We start with research. We start with case studies, exactly like what we did in college. Site analysis, programmatic analysis, multiple start points, trying to see where all these parameters, are they converging? Are they not converging? Are they leading us into more options? Fine, even that is okay. Our processes are not linear by any means. We keep going. I mean, cyclic also, maybe not. I think it's we keep going forward and backward and forward and backward, oscillating between different domains of architecture that we are trying to operate within, to see where the kind of equilibrium lies and where does that kind of one solution fit all parameters. And like I said, we are constantly adapting. So even the layers getting added into the project as we move on. Like, just for example, I mean, if I were to talk about Sharda, earlier these bolts, where they kind of touch the ground, there was supposed to be walls out there, and we were like, oh my god, because you don't have head height out towards the end, and what will happen if some kid will bang his head on the bolt? And then once they de-shuttered the whole thing and we went there, that space was beautiful, and in fact you wanted to go down, take a book, cozy up, and sit in that little corner. Because it just scaled down so well for these young kids that it was not comfortable for us as adults, but it was the apt place for the younger kids. So, I mean, these kind of adaptations and changes are constant through the project. So, sorry, yeah, but to answer your question, the faculty, we have multiple start points, and we insist on having enough data in all these aspects before we even start finalizing anything. And I think doubt is so underrated, that that doubt is what drives us to question more and answer more.
Wonderful. I think it's a very good thing through inquiry, through discussions,
Yeah.
through up because I did see a lot of collaboration in your design process also, like not just with the workers who are going to execute it, but like you mentioned for Maya Somaya library, that you also got the brick tested with material testers, you got them tested through the software agencies. So I think that is something that the students could also kind of learn and take back from, that if you are standing behind your design, then that you need to do it confidently with the support of the entire network and system that any project really requires in it. And that is the true essence of collaboration, right? So thank you so much, Vami. This
Sonam.
was a beautiful, inspiring beginning, and I'm sure that the nudge is just perfect for the students to start with their design explorations. I would now invite Akash Sahai. Akash currently works at Graphisoft as the partner sales manager and is responsible for business growth in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka regions. He holds a master's degree in sales and marketing, but is a mechanical engineer by qualification. With more than 9 years of professional expertise in the CAD/CAM industry, he's held different roles across various organizations and is here to speak. And thank you as well, Vami.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, Akash.
Great. Thanks, Sonam, for the short intro. And firstly, I would like to start thanking to the first team and hosting the Graphisoft Archicad Design Challenge second edition this year as well. And based on the last year's success, we are very sure that this year also will have more success in inspiring the student with different industry knowledge and the ideas which they may get from the the leading architecture firms and the practitioners across the country. And with that, I would also like to thank Dwaipan Chakrabarti for accepting our invitation to us and joining us today for these sessions. And I'm sure we'll be listening you more in the upcoming sessions down the line. And again, a special thanks to Swami Kotesha as well for joining and accepting our invitation for the sessions. And I am pretty sure that this session would have definitely helped many students who will join today, in getting ideas and inspiration from the practitioners like you, then how we can utilize their ideas as a priority and then comes to the software to do a modern thing in that. So thanks a ton to all of you who are joining here. And with this, I'd like to start a small introduction about Graphisoft as a company, because you might have heard the company name a couple of times in the past or maybe today. And so let me just share my screen. So, Sonam, can you confirm if you're able to
Yes, not
see my
full
screen
yet. Yes, can see it.
Okay, so I think my introduction is already given by Sonam, so I'll just jump to the main topic. But as a short, my name is Akash, and I head the Graphisoft business in India and the neighboring countries. And today I'll be more talking about the brief history about Graphisoft as a company. So Graphisoft is not, quite 10 years old company. It's, we just completed 42 years last month. And it was founded in way back 1982 by our founder Gabor Boyar in Hungary, Budapest. And that's where our headquarters is based on. And in 1986, we launched our first virtual building approach in Archicad, which we call it as BIM in today's world. And the very interesting fact which I would like to highlight is you might be seeing in my presentation that the first IBM PC was launched in 1981. And we, as a company, got launched in 1982, which is compatible. Archicad was compatible with that system in those days in 1982. And the first Macintosh, we call it as Apple or MacBook in today's world, was launched in 1984. And in 1986, we were compatible with that as well in terms of the software. And from that time till today's, Graphisoft Archicad software is compatible for both Windows and Mac OS system until today. And I would say very proudly that we are the only BIM software company who has this kind of advantage over others. Now, during this period from that days to today, we have done done major acquisitions. We got acquired with different companies and we became a part of a bigger German group called Nemetschek. I'll be talking a bit about that in my next slide. We call it as Nemetschek, which is a German listed company. And we were from the starting, our approach was about open BIM initiatives, where we always encourage people to interact with each other's softwares and do a better design, rather getting restricted in an ecosystem where you are not able to be very interactive. And down the line, we acquired a company called DDSCAD, which helped us in enabling our MEP tool as well within Archicad systems. So this was a small intro and the roadmap of our 42 years of journey. Now, as I talked about Nemetschek, so Nemetschek is a 61 years old company based in Germany and headquartered in Munich, Germany, which was founded in 1963. It has 13 brands under its umbrella, which you might be heard about software called Archicad and Allplan, Vectorworks, Bluebeam, Solidity. All the softwares are part of Nemetschek Group. So we have 13 strong brand across the umbrella of Nemetschek, which is operating independently across the globe. And we are a company of more than 850 million euro in sales compared to last year, and we have a user base of more than 2.3 million users across 146 countries with more than 3,000 employees across the globe as a Nemetschek Group. With a short background about Graphisoft, we are having more than 400,000 of users across the globe with operations in 110 countries, with more than 25 or 29 localized language, like German has German versions, Japanese has Japanese versions like that. And we are having more than 178 partners across the globe who are helping us in taking this to the practitioners and the colleges and the institute to make it aware about the Archicad software and get it used. These are our set of solutions or the services which as a Graphisoft we provide, whereas Archicad being our flagship product for the design, BIM Cloud being our collaboration tool where you can collaborate with multiple people on a common project through a cloud network. And then we have a very fantastic tool called Graphisoft BIMX, which is more of presentation tool, which is a free tool available for anyone to upload your file, share it with your client or the customers or your professor or within the teams. That is a fantastic tool. I would encourage students and the other people to get it downloaded in your Android or Mac OS systems and try to use it. We have DGSCAD, which is our MEP tool. And when it comes to the services, we have called Graphisoft Learn, which is our learning portal where you'll be all getting access very recently for learning the solutions and getting ideas about the software. We have Graphisoft Forward as in services for our commercial customers. And a larger community, we call it as Graphisoft Community, which is where people or the customers or students across the globe come and interact with each other, share their ideas, ask their question, get it answered. And any question which has not been answered, Graphisoft jump in and try to answer those. So we make sure that any question which comes in community get answered and get it, reply to it. So this was a short introduction about the company and the things. These are the key clients in India who are using probably Archicad across the country. It is in India actually. And with this was a short introduction from my side. And with this, I would like to hand over to my colleague who is joining today, Mr. Sandro Bali from Singapore. With this, I'll just like to give a short introduction about Sandor. So Sandor is working as a Senior Customer Success Manager at Graphisoft and joining from Singapore. And he supports Graphisoft Partner Channel across Asia Pacific. He has done MSc in Architectures and Engineer in 2009 and BSc in Construction Architects in 2011. He's a registered consultant at Graphisoft and working with Archicad since way back in 2003. And he started working with Graphisoft from our headquarters as a business development manager and then BIM implementation architect and specialized in energy evaluation, eco design and start. From that time, he's training around 150 participants yearly since 2015 from the architecture practices, contractor, interior designer in different large enterprise companies. And is also a guest lecturer at NUS Department of Building. He is also an author of Revit Archicad and BIMX Workflow Guide, the AEC Workflow Guide, and the Land Survey Workflow Guide, the Architectural Native BIM Submission Guide, the Structural Submission Template Guide, and the MEP Submission Template Guide for Archicad in collaboration with the Singapore Government Agency since 2015. So this was a short intro about my colleague Sandor Bali, and over to you, Sandor.
Thank you, Akash, and thanks everyone for the presentations before. They were quite inspiring. So it was great to see that. And now it's my role actually to introduce a little bit about the tool and the technology. So I'll just share the screen and let's just jump into this. And first of all, I would like to introduce like what we offer for the education segment. And at this point, it includes both the students and the schools. So let's just go into this. So first of all, Okay, let's see if it's working. Yeah, it's working. Let's take a look at the challenges. So without going into an actual solution, without knowing what we're facing, let's just take a look at it, what you're looking at as part of this competition as well, but also as part of your studies as well. So basically, as students, you would like to sell your design also to your professors, right? So basically, this is what you are going to do later on as well, when it comes to the real practice. But it already starts at this point. And obviously, it shouldn't just be about selling the idea, but you should want to have a great project, good concept, and to be able to create what you actually figured out as a concept. If you look further beyond that and further beyond the competition or just a semester ahead of you, obviously you would like to have some competitive advantage and get ready for the job market as well. So it's just okay. Besides that, you would need the tool itself. So we definitely want to make sure that you have access to the software or the software packages or whatever comes across. When it comes to the schools, and when I try to think of the mind of the professors and the program itself, obviously we would like to have a solution that is easy to learn, it's easy to teach. So on both sides, it's not going to give us an extra overhead to proceed with. So in that sense, what we were aiming for is that for the schools to expand their curriculums, this should be a minimal effort. So you'll see later how we move towards that. And also, again, if I look at it from a school's point of view, the teaching program should be relevant for the students so that the students value it. And as they get ready for the job market, this is how you can enable them as an institution. And then also a little bit about the access to the software. We need to look at the actual deployment, so how it is going to be accessible for the students, how they can install it, how can we provide the licenses, just to be sure that everything is as smooth as possible. So maybe also taking one step back, previously you already heard about parametricism, and I'll also delve into that as well later on. But there was another term, BIM. And many of you may have heard of it already. Many of you may have not heard of it. So the question is, just think about it. When was the first time when you heard about it, and what did you imagine what it is? How did you picture it? What is your understanding of it? Basically, one of the basics that people associate with is that BIM is 3D modeling. It's not only 3D, so it's a more complex approach. And here's some kind of a definition of it, but I just highlighted the main aspects that I think you should focus on. Is that it's one aspect is that it's a digital representation, which obviously includes the 3D, but also includes information about the elements. It is used throughout the whole life cycle of the building. So it's not just for the design, and it's not just that we create a 3D model to show our design intent and create the documentation so that it can be built. But it even goes beyond that, the operation and the maintenance, potential renovations, and demolition as well. And then you also want to make sure that this approach, this workflow, allows you to collaborate with the others, and that the information can be shared, and you have access to the information anytime you need it, and you can extract information as well. So it's a whole lot more than just 3D. And it even goes to the level that, for example, in the UK, they introduced BIM maturity levels. So you can see the different ones. We're at level 2 currently, where we are working on federated 3D models, which means that different consultants, different disciplines create their own models. We federate them, we do coordination, we do clash checking, we try to sort out the issues, and create an end product from this. This is very much advanced compared to level 0 and level 1, where you were just using 2D, for example, or different disconnected models, but still not perfect. So level 3 is more of a concept at this point. However, it's getting closer and closer as the technology evolves. And also, if you think about like the metaverse, where you could think of one source of the truth as a single model that all the different disciplines and stakeholders work together and develop that model together. So this is just a little outlook. And then you might say, oh, okay, that sounds a little bit complex. And anyways, it's fine. I'm not that interested. I want to be a designer. I want to create, these great designs. So in a sense, creating a nice shape with the parametric approach will do. So why do I need to deal about all these things about the information, all the different types of models? Typically, this is what we are looking at. Also, as if you're a student, then your curriculum is preparing you to be an architect, a designer, interior architect, maybe other polytechnics or other education institutions. They prepare you to be a draftsman. Or maybe you're just having a base education and eventually you specialize, and then you might become a quantity surveyor, or you start to work in a contractor company, become a contractor yourself or a builder yourself. So all these different roles in the industry, why is it relevant for all of us to deal with BIM? And the thing is that the industry is changing, and now you might more look into the aspects of having a role of a BIM author, where you're creating a model and creating data as well, or a BIM coordinator when you're working with the different consultants, or like a BIM manager when you're setting up standards, making sure that your office works as a BIM-enabled practice as well. So in that sense, even like designers are not just designers anymore, but they are more like BIM authors. So they get in touch with a BIM tool during their practices. And just another example here, if again, we're just thinking about mostly the design phase, what we do as an architect, and even myself when I was learning, or when I was at the university studying to become an architect, I was thinking about, oh, I will just do designs. But even if you look at this different project phases, you can see that the BIM usage, it can be different various uses. So during all the different phases, you can find an activity or a task which heavily involves BIM. And we're really just focusing on design, but there's a lot more beyond that. So how do we tie into this with Archicad and our products with Graphisoft? Basically, we would have the three solutions that Akash also mentioned as well. The BIM author tool is Archicad. Our collaboration platform is BIM Cloud, where you can manage information as well. And the third leg, or the third pillar of this ecosystem, would be BIMX, our mobile app, or actually it's available in various platforms as well, where you can present your project. And also nowadays you can even use it for collaboration as well. So basically the thing is that accessing the project info, managing it, presenting it, is all revolving around these three pillars. So we also want to make sure that with our solution, we empower you to create the great architecture. So that's where we would like to introduce Archicad for you. And I really just want to give you a very quick overview of what it can do. And basically going back and reflecting on the challenges, as a student, probably this is what you're looking for. A simple workflow. If you are doing updates, then in doing updates, one part of the model, then it should be easy to manage these changes. You shouldn't be limited by any of your tools that something just cannot be done, and that because of that you just throw away an idea and try a different approach. We shouldn't do that. Also, about the presentation, you want to create a render or just any kind of walkthrough presentations so that it can be a more immersive experience. Or even if you just think about the traditional workflows, you would want to create presentation boards or have a more interactive, potentially a more interactive way how it is being presented. And again, if I look further down the road into the future, then you could get some experience when using a tool, like how you would use a tool in a real life environment. So for example, it's not just that you're using it on your own, but you're using it in a team and in a collaborative environment. So let's take a look at these different aspects. One thing about the workflow. Currently, you could use many different design tools, and everything has its positives and advantages. So some of those you use for modeling, some of them you use for drafting, some of them you use to create the documentation. But the same way as these have positives, there are a lot of questions as well. And mostly it is about the changes and how do you ensure that the other part of the process, so if you fragment this process, how can you ensure that these different fragments actually connect to each other and they are not well, disconnected? So if it comes to this fragmented workflow, basically you could see something like this. I'll just show for the whole thing first. You could think about this, that there's some model authoring where you create your model. It could be any tool that can create 3D shapes. Then maybe you export that model to a rendering tool, or maybe you create a render. At the same time, you try to create 2D documentation somewhere else. Once you have the render, once you have the 2D documentation, you try to put these together into a PDF so that you can create a documentation set. But what happens if you're not fully happy with the renders? You still need to do a touch-up, let's say in Photoshop. And when everything is done, you present this to your professor, who gives you some advice, and then it turns out that you need to change your design. Well, you need to go through all these steps once again. And this happens multiple times, and that's actually the cumbersome part of it, because you're spending a lot of time on the design changes and managing the changes instead of actually improving the design. So what we have here, and I'm showing this with Archicad, but pretty much this is the essence of the BIM workflow. So in a way, it's a generic streamlining of your workflow. If you have a BIM authoring tool that can help you with all these aspects, then obviously if you put in your ideas there, then you can create the model, create the documentation. If you need to connect to third-party apps, that should be as smooth as possible and should not fragment the workflow, as you could see in the previous slide. So these should be like live connections, live syncing, or something where if you change something in one product, it shows up right away in the other one. And in case of Archicad, you can also think of, besides a traditional documentation set, you can think of a digital delivery as well, which is going to be our BIMX, the mobile application that I just mentioned. So here's just a quick view. What I try to explain. You have the model, you have the documentation in the same file, and basically this is the thing. You just change the design a little bit. You don't have to go to another software. Basically, the drawings will automatically update, and then your documentation is up to date, right? So if you can just, it seems like a small thing, but if you're doing it the wrong way, then it can be really hurtful. So this is the essence of the BIM workflow at this point, to manage these changes. So moving on, let's move on to the design. So I would like to create something at this point. So we definitely want to support you with your inspirations, the design, the model content itself, and creating a documentation as well. So when it comes to the design tools, the modeling tools, what we were aiming for is the ease of use and the intuitiveness. So you will see that there are mostly visual graphical element editings in place. There are a lot of parametric elements, and at this point, I'm not even talking about the hardcore parametricism that we're also going to mention. But basically, this is one thing, and the other one is that we have a lot of content that comes with the tool itself built in, which are typically objects like furniture elements. And what I showed also on the previous slide, we want to connect to the external tools so that whatever you find on the internet, you like it, you have it from some other source, you can just insert into the project, so you don't have to recreate it. So here are some snippets of how, for example, the editing works. You can see that as you click on an element, you can use these hotspots, these floating palettes come up, and then show you the different options, how you can edit the elements. Or for example, the other one about the dialogues, how that they are visual. Here you can see an object that you can change the parameters of the object from the default library and just change to a different configuration, right? So you don't have to build these from all the bits and pieces, but choose something that is kind of ready-made and configure it. So in general, just a few snapshots of how the interface looks like, that it's we like to say, and actually it's true, that Archicad was made by architects for architects. Many of us at the company are architects, apart from the developers, but the product designers, product managers are mostly all architects and understand that there is a visual need for you to be efficient to make this whole thing more intuitive. So these are, I would say, very friendly looking settings where you can change and configure your elements. And of course, just a few examples how you would create some custom elements. There's much more into it, so we'll see that later. When it comes to visualization, there are two types. So one could be part of the documentation. And again, here, I just want to give you an example that with a few clicks, if you have your section in the tool, you can change the settings, apply the textures, even add maybe some sun shadows on the section, just so that it comes alive. You can see even the reflections, the clouds in the glass. You can even set up what we call fade or mark distant area, so that you can set up that there is a background and there's a foreground. And add a lot of different effects that right away make your output ready actually for publishing. So typically all these things you would do in Photoshop, that you have a blank drawing and then you drop in fills here and there, and you try to add the effects. But all these can be added within the tool. So just by that, you can save a lot of time as well. Okay. Besides that, we have the standard rendering solutions as well. There are some built-in options. There are connections. For example, with Twinmotion, we have a live connection. And then this is what you can create within Archicad itself. Cineware engine is a very similar one to like what 3ds Max has. It has detailed settings. So if you already have experience, you're free to explore those and add as many details as you want. But if you're not into rendering, then you can even use just simple presets. So basically you choose from different scenes, and Archicad will just generate a quick rendering for you. But obviously in these scenarios, we always have a preference. So typically for rendering, everyone has a preference. So I'm just showing here Twinmotion, which is not a Graphisoft product, but we have a very good connection with it. And that's a very nice live rendering tool. And very similar to that one, we have the live connection to Enscape as well. So basically, they very much provide the same experience in the sense that you have your model, you synchronize it to the other tool, and then you do a real-time rendering in that other tool. And here are just some other examples which renderers you can also connect to Archicad. Okay, when it comes to the documentation itself, I think this is very much one of the artistic parts of the architectural profession, and this is where you can really show your style. So, for example, again, here are just small things maybe, but to be able to create certain types of lines, for example, those bush drawings, those are special line types. You just draw them with the standard 2D tools, and then all this combination of lines you save as a drafting line. Or you draw a pattern and then you save it as a custom fill to create the fill representation that you see at the bottom. But the whole idea of having one central model is that you can derive different views of that. So even in a traditional workflow, let's say you have an architectural plan, you want to create a fire plan. Typically, we created a copy and try to draw it to look different. In a BIM workflow, you have one model, and then you can choose how that model looks and then save those different views for different purposes. So everything is contained in one, and here you can see just a few examples, like maybe more of a technical drawing, more of a catalog type of representation, or even like combining renders with the technical drawing. Maybe another one that's very interesting is to communicate, and this is what you could see in the previous presentation, how we can make our design more understandable for people who can't read plans, or we just want to sell it to the client or want to make sure that the builder understands it. We have these exploded views, which we call 3D documents, where you can just cut the 3D view and put on additional information using texts. And obviously, in the end, this can also be part of the completed document set. And here, I'm just showing you those examples that come right away out of Archicad without additional work in Photoshop or InDesign. So obviously, we are kind of limitless what we want to achieve sometimes, and how good our documentation sets should look. But I think if everyone can create this level, just by using one tool, then that's a huge time saver, and you already become really, really efficient creating these sets. So moving further on, okay, now we have the project, we have our design, we have our documentation. Let's show it to the client. So here is BIMX. What I mentioned, that this is a walkthrough presentation tool. It is available in multiple platforms, so you can find the desktop version. There's a browser-based version as well. You can save different views into the presentation, so it tells the story. And you can combine the 2D and the 3D together. So because they come from the same source, the same Archicad file, they are connected, there's no mismatch, and you can easily switch between the 2D and the 3D, and depending on which part is telling more about a particular the particular concept or a particular situation within the building. And it's not just visual, because you can tap on the elements, you can get information from the elements. You can always take it with you to have a presentation. So it's a really cool gadget, and you can even try, even now, it's freely accessible for download, and it has a demo project, so you can just experience this whole setup. Okay. And we're moving on, just a very quick one about the collaboration. Some of you will try this, maybe some of you may not. It's just one example here about the teamwork, and also you can see that this is the project in Archicad. So here I have to manually move these, but basically what happens is that we can share our offline project into what we call BIM Cloud, which is the teamwork platform. And in that one, the different users in the team will be able to join the project. And we have this, what we call as a teamwork palette. You can see people who joined there with different colors. And if I want to work on some elements, then I can choose to reserve the elements so that I will be editing them. And if it belongs to someone already, then I see that happening. Obviously, that is not too friendly if I have to check the elements one by one. So I have these visual overrides when I can say that, let's say, highlight the elements by the reservation rights. So where do they belong to? And in this case, for example, the dark blue is what can be freely edited and is available for reservation. So this technology allows you to work together without editing each other's elements, without having to have multiple files of the project that you have to somehow combine eventually. You can send messages to each other as well. So for example, here, this element belongs to someone else, so I would like to request it. But I can also request for a review or just share, ideas with someone else, or just give tasks to the others, asking them to, I don't know, like change the design of a certain element. So this can really be a nice collaborative tool with the messaging and basically with the sending and receiving the changes of the project. Okay, so maybe this was just a little highlight. I'm not sure how many of you will actually have a chance to try the teamwork. In some cases, it will be more convenient to stick to the offline world as well. But this one is also going to be available for you. Okay, so moving on, let's just go a little practical. So how can you get all of this? So first of all, what you will need to create is a Graphisoft ID. Basically, that is going to be your online entity with Graphisoft, and this is allowing you to access all the different services. So any Graphisoft page, any Graphisoft platform you go to, you will be able to sign up for one. And actually, one thing where you can start definitely is going to be myarchicad.com. So myarchicad.graphisoft.com is where you can sign up for your student license. And basically, you just go to the site, you register, you are going to create the Graphisoft ID during the registration process. You will need to upload some documents that prove that you're a student. So student ID card typically would do. And then you have a 1-year access to the software. So this means that every year you can upgrade as well. So next year you can try the next version as well. You get the installer, which you just download, install, and sign in with the Graphisoft ID. So after the registration and the approval, we will know that you're students, and this is where we can take you to the next step, how to actually learn the tool. There will be live sessions as well later on, especially on the parametric part. But we want to provide you with some self-paced materials as well. So if you just go to learn.graphisoft.com, that's our Learn portal where we have all the self-paced materials and where you can sign in with the Graphisoft ID. There is a set of foundation courses that will be accessible for free for you as students. So these include learning paths where you have a goal from going from A to B and through a set of courses, but you can have access to individual courses, and you can also get a certificate for completing courses. As a student, you also get the discount on advanced courses as well, but probably that's going to be it's going to be probably quite enough to go through the foundation classes as well. So here are just a few ideas what you can get in these foundation paths. So getting started in general, know the basics of the modeling, the documentation, how you present, how you change the level of detail in your model, and then how you work in teams, how you can manage the data a little bit and get the data extraction with the scheduling, and maybe a little bit more on the presentation beyond the BIMX, how to create the visualizations and how to create or how to do these little tricks with the drawings as well. Besides that, obviously, you can find a lot of things on YouTube. We have our own channel as well with conceptual videos, new feature videos, testimonials as well. And there are a lot of creators who create a lot of fancy videos, and not just fancy, but very useful ones on how to create certain stuff in Archicad. I really encourage you to take a look at YouTube and community.graphisoft.com, which is our combined platform for knowledge-based article, self-help as well. So if you have trouble, probably first thing you can check community for official help, and maybe some of the forums to see if someone else had the same issue and could figure it out already. So I hope this sets the baseline. So I think the next one is going to be that you need to get access to the trainings themselves. And by this, I got to the end of this section. I hope that you will see that all this exercise is showing more than just being a competition, but is actually preparing you for your future architectural practice and gives you a competitive advantage as well. So I will just stop here. Okay, I'll stop sharing this one, and I'll open up the other one because I would like to go into the parametricism. If you have any questions in the meantime, then please put it in the chat box, and we can get back to those later on. And I'm just going to share once again the other presentation. Okay, so I think you can see this now, right? So the parametric design, which is a little bit, it's complementing the topic of BIM, I would say. And it was very interesting to see the presentation from Architect Vami and Architect Advaipayan, because they mentioned one particular thing that I also mentioned here in this one, and I hope you can relate back to those as well. So parametric design, you've already seen some of the ideas what it is actually, but maybe you. I mean, we've seen some good aspects, what it could be. What I would focus on more is the terms, because you can hear a lot of other terms as well. So parametric as well, but computational, generative, algorithmic. So what is the difference? Is there a difference? Well, there is, but they are quite overarching and overlapping in many aspects. But just to quickly go through, basically, in case of the computational design, you would use the algorithms and the parameters to solve a design problems, and mostly to make use of the computational power, right? So something that you cannot really handle manually is assisted with by using the computer. Parametric design would be mostly focused on the editing and modifications of the elements, so that we have a parameter and then we can change that parameter so that the actual design is changing. Generative design would focus more actually on the quality of the design and the solution that we give to a design problem, because there you can set up algorithms, certain requirements, certain rules, and that the solution would generate a batch of options for you to evaluate, right? So all of those would fulfill the requirements, and it's up to you to further evaluate which solution you're going to go with. And basically, when it comes to the algorithmic design, then you just produce this whole set of rules, which can be a very complex set of rules that will eventually produce the design model for you. And here's the thing that I was mentioning before, that I reflect back to the previous presentations, is that here is the architect in the center of the process, the center of the universe at this point, and they have to have a holistic approach to get the idea, the context of the whole project, the codes, the local codes, standards, what building materials are available, how those will be procured, delivered, have to deal with the owner, and a lot of things. And basically, any of the inputs that the architect has ends up in a lot of design iterations. So what we're focusing here is when we move into more of a generative design approach at this point, is that we want to focus on creating a rule set, a framework that will help us to create the design. So at this point, we're not necessarily focusing on the design, but the framework that is going to help us to create that. So this is true basically for the generative, for the algorithmic design as well. And as I mentioned here, the focus is going to be on designing the source code itself, rather than focus on one design option itself. So why is this whole approach relevant? Where is it today? Well, it's a very trendy thing nowadays. You can see everywhere these freeform shapes that go beyond the traditional forms. Also, it's a very innovative segment. It's rapidly evolving. It's all around us, and even for us as a software vendor or solution provider, you know, this is a new area where we can tap into architectural practices, which are creating high-end design using totally different tools than ours. Typically, these are Rhino or 3D Max. Obviously, as projects get larger and larger, they get more complex, and we would want to have more control on the design. So all these algorithmic systems, generative systems, are just more intuitive to be used for projects where you have repetitive parts. The shape itself, like if it's a stadium, the shape is pretty much already manifests in some fluid organic shape, and typically these repetitive elements that are part of the project that I mentioned are the ones that really govern the design itself. So, for example, in the case of the stadium, it's the seating units, right? Analytical tools, extensions, add-ons can really easily be added into this workflow and be integrated in the process. And essentially, when you think about handling the data with Grasshopper, let's say, or handling the data in BIM, in both cases, you're dealing with databases. So bringing these worlds together seems to be just a natural next step. So what are the parametric design tools that we use? Well, I mentioned here in the previous one the typical tool set of the designers. Again, this is something that is still fragmented. And by fragmented, if I look at the workflow, by fragmented, what I mean is that we have a design phase typically where we are very flexible in creating the shapes and have control on the design. But at some point, we just freeze the design and say, okay, let's do the documentation now. Let's put in data into this and just close it off. But the thing is that if we need to change one of these aspects, then it's really hard to update the other one. So because of that, we would like to intertwine these two different phases as much as possible. And by that, have a longer period of control over the design, and also be able to produce the documentation and have the data input earlier on than what we got used to. So this is where what we're aiming for is a live connection between the design phase and the documentation and the information management, which in this case is going to be Rhino on the design phase and Archicad on the documentation part. So maybe some of you are not familiar with the tools. So let's just give you a quick overview. So Rhino is basically one of the most popular 3D modeler tools. It has a lot of add-ins. It's used in many different industries. So not just AEC, but in generic, I mean, like, for example, jewelry, product design as well, visualization as well, manufacturing and fabrication as well. And anything that we create there as a model can be used for analysis, and even like what you could see in the previous presentation, the cutouts of the support elements. You can also create those in Rhino once your model is complete. Grasshopper is an add-on, or nowadays it's actually built into Rhino. It's a graphical algorithmic editor. So basically the parametricity that you need to edit the Rhino model is what is provided by Grasshopper. In Rhino, you can model anything, but if you want to make a change, then you may have to remodel the thing, right? So that's not truly flexible. And this is where Grasshopper can come into the picture if I oversimplify it. But it has a lot of further add-ons to expand the capabilities and do analysis as well with Grasshopper. And then there's also obviously Archicad, which is going to be our tool to design and deliver the projects, which we will connect with Rhino and Grasshopper. And you can see the example on the screen. This model initially was generated in Rhino and Grasshopper, and then was synchronized into Archicad so that we can create the documentation and the quantity takeoffs here on native BIM element. So what is this live connection about? There are a few workflows how this actually can work. So one thing is that you start in Rhino and Grasshopper, you create something, there is a geometry, and then you synchronize it into Archicad, and then you can get this result. You can create a documentation, basically the same thing that I just mentioned for the previous example. Here you can an example of how this actually works. Basically, you have to have the three solutions open. You can see that in Rhino, we start with some very basic geometries, and then in Grasshopper, we add the parametricity to these geometries and also the different types of transformations. So we can offset, obviously, these lines, but basically the idea is that we're just creating a very simple distribution of elements along these different curves. And this distribution is something that we can control further on with those different sliders. How many do we want? How far they should be from each other? Or we can even transform the curves and change the curvature and the shape itself. Whatever we do, the end of the end product of the geometry is going to update. And you can see that the last part was adding a so-called column or a column, Archicad column related node, which will eventually synchronize the elements. So whatever you have just as an axis and maybe an extruded shape in Rhino, it is converted to a native Archicad column, which is great because then we don't have to deal with representation limitations or that there's a data loss in between the import export. We just directly create these elements, and eventually at this point we also added some beams on top of the columns as well. So this is the simplest workflow when you create something in Rhino, Grasshopper, and then you transfer it to Archicad. But it could be bi-directional as well, and in this case we would start from Archicad. So let's say the curve that you created in the previous video, you created in Rhino. What if you create that curve in Archicad, and then you synchronize it to Grasshopper and use it as the base of the transformation, create the geometry, and sync the geometry back to Archicad? Why the extra step? Where could this be useful? Imagine that you get information, land information, site plan information from, let's say, a 2D drawing, DWG, or PDF. You explode those lines. You can use that, create the setback lines in Rhino and Grasshopper, and maybe the building, the sides, the envelope of the building are connected to those setbacks. So as long as you start changing the setbacks, the whole building is going to adapt to this, because it starts with Archicad, goes to Grasshopper, and then comes back to Archicad. One step further, and I'm going to show you an actual example as well. One step further is that you're not just using 2D lines like the side plan that I mentioned, but you're using an existing 3D geometry in Archicad and use that as the basis of the transformation in Rhino and Grasshopper to create a building. So this is what we would think about more like design automation, and what we call in particular in Archicad what we call as a deconstruct workflow. So a very simple example here is that you have an Archicad wall. Then you can refer this wall in Grasshopper, and in Grasshopper you can use the deconstruct nodes to extract information and reuse that information. So this could be basic geometry or Archicad settings or any kind of information put into the element earlier in Archicad. And maybe another example here that makes actually more sense here. You can see an existing element, a set of existing elements, which we call the zone tool, which we typically use in the early design phase for programming. So you can just stack these different offices. They have different zones. They have different categories like residential, office, retail categories. You have a quick schedule that is verifying whether you meet the program needs. And let's say if it turns out that it doesn't really meet the needs, then we can start changing these zones as well. But what happens here is that these zones are the basis of creating a structure for the building. So this is where we use the computational part of the design, that I don't want to spend time on moving around columns just because I change the program. So you can see that as soon as I change the zones, I can update the connection and send these changes. The script goes through a Grasshopper and comes back so that my structure itself gets updated as well. And again, here the sky is the limit. So how flexible we want to make it, how refined our rules are, should every single change should be followed, or there should be certain limits. That's a different question. But basically the idea is that I don't want to do repetitive stuff or of adjusting my model because I'm just still working on the design phase, and I just want to make sure that the areas are correct. Okay, so I think this is very much relevant use case as well, but you can have some other examples, let's say taking some analysis on existing geometries like terrain models. Typically you can get these even from Google Earth or in SketchUp format, or import GIS map data as well to generate this information. And for example, this can help you to analyze how much earthworks you would need, where is the best place to place the building to avoid too much earthworks, or what is the sloping of the terrain so that you can handle wastewater drain and rainwater as well. So there are a lot of options, and for these mostly we use additional tools, extensions for a Grasshopper, typically for the environmental analysis. There are these so-called Ladybug tools. Not sure if you've heard of them. It's basically they are all, yeah. So for example, Ladybug is using the standard weather files to import climate data, and based on that create climate related graphics so that help you with the support, help you and support you with the decision making in the early phases of the design. Honeybee goes a step further, and that creates and supports these daylighting and thermodynamic modeling, which are more relevant during the mid and later stages of the design. So it could be like radiation simulations and such. Butterfly can run CFD simulations. So for example, airflow simulations. And Dragonfly is to create district scale energy models, for example. So you will not necessarily use these. It's just more like food for thought. in this case. And basically, the idea of using these tools is that you can also enhance existing Archicad features as well. So, for example, we have in Archicad what we call parametric complex profiles, which basically what happens here is that as a complex profile, you can create a cross-section of an element. You just draw, and you can see it's a complex one. It's not just a rectangular shape like with a regular wall or like a footing of an element, but it has these different widths of the segments. And what we can do to make this parametric is that we can set so-called offset modifiers for these. And once I place the element, I can change the width of these different segments on my own. But it's always going to be an extrusion of the elements. But the thing is that if I connect this all with Grasshopper, then I can use and control these widths in a more of a framework based on certain rules, and then I can create something that is more interesting, and it's not just an extrusion, but I can place multiple elements with different sizes and widths. Another example is to maybe use this along with the plugins that I just showed, is that, for example, in this existing building, I would like to place some shadings of the elements, but I would like to create them in a smart way. So their width and the size of these shadings should really reflect on the actual radiation and the sunlight analysis. So if I use the Ladybug tools, then I can just show how much this surface is exposed to the sunlight. And based on that, and for example, using those lines, I can control the depth or the width or the thickness of these panels that I'm going to place there. And in this example, those panels are also being placed using the parametric complex profile. So there's the complex profile that I just showed even in the previous one. And where you can see those little arrows, those are all adjustable edges. It's up to you to decide whether something should be adjustable. So this is purely Archicad, but then we go through the process of the analysis in Grasshopper, and based on that, we control these sizes. And this is what you will see here in a second. So pretty impressive, I think, what it creates. So if you change the lines, then you can update the shape, or if you change the orientation, obviously different sunlight conditions will also make it an adaptive one. Okay, moving on to another one is the curtain wall tool. So a few years ago, we changed the curtain wall tool to be more flexible when it comes to creating the scheme and the pattern of the curtain wall. But these patterns can also be controlled using Grasshopper. So for example, here you can see one nice example about the panel distribution, whether those are glass or solid panels, whether this distribution is affecting more or less the surface, or how dispersed these things are. This is one example, but basically there is also another option where you can deal with the frames as well. All right, so here you can see once we do the synchronization, once we finalize the design in Rhino, we just say turn this on with a Boolean toggle, and then it gets synchronized into Archicad as well. Here now on the Rhino side, you can see that there's another example, which is manipulating the thickness of the frames. So here we have two settings, but basically what happens is that we have an attractor point. So if there's a frame closer to this particular point, then it's going to be a thicker frame in the design, right? So again, you can see once it's synchronized into Archicad, it just goes through, and it's not an imported element from somewhere else. So it's a natively generated Archicad curtain wall with all its advantages. And maybe there's a third example, would be more of a traditional thing that we're not modifying it or manipulating existing elements, but basically these very standard transformations of the loft and the sweep in Rhino, which are very common, especially for the beginners. You can create a shape, and then basically you can just use the curtain wall to tile around that shape. So here, yeah, we're just playing around with that. And once we're ready, all those triangles will be converted to actual curtain wall pieces in Archicad. So this way we can also create these fluid shapes that we were just talking about before as well. So I hope you liked it. And yeah, I might be overrunning the time as well, so I'll just stop here soon. A very quick example. You can find this on our website as well. It's a case study and actually one of our signature projects from a few years ago in Archicad 23. We had this as the main building. It's a rhythmic gymnastics center in Russia, and you can see it's resembling the ribbon with the shape. So basically it's a great story because it's not just focusing on the parametric design. However, parametric design was a great deal of this. You can see fairly complex code of the roof structure that was created for this, and also for the arrangement of the tiles and the layout of the cladding. But this project was really an effort or a result of a collaborative effort and what we call it open BIM. So different tools were used for different purposes, not just Archicad, but like very specific tools for structural design, which is Tekla Structures, and Solibri for checking the model for collisions and using rule-based checks as well. So if you're interested, you can find this on our website as well, and some more details on it. Really encourage you to take a look if you have time. But I'll just stop here. And by that, thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, then we'll just check the chat and respond to those. So I'll stop sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sandor. I think it was really like lessons worth 80 hours packed into 1 hour. It was a huge task that you took on to yourself to introduce the tools to the students who've joined and gathered with us here. So maybe if there are doubts, because they're not actually practicing on their systems, so the doubts will for sure come when they work on the desk. I will quickly take all of them through the brief and launch the competition so that if there are any doubts or queries about the design challenge, we could take them through it. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome everyone once again. This is the formal launch of the Archicad Design Challenge, where we are poking you and nudging you to explore different possibilities with, of course, Archicad, but at the same time, work on multiple design iterations of the same project that you're working in the studio. So this is not unlike a competition which expects or demands additional time. The framework of this competition is such that you can very well align it with your architectural studios in the classroom as well. This has two components to it. As you can see, you have the design mentorship sessions that will be conducted with architect Dwaipa and Chakravarti, and you will have the free software training aspects to it as well. Many of you asked me about certifications. So yes, you have certifications as participants to both of them. but you have to look at it more like a competition rather than just a knowledge sharing exercise. And that is what we'll delve into next. We do have lessons coming in from some of the masters in the industry on parametricism as well. But at the same time, what we need, like here we have a small note by architect B.V. Doshi, and I remember Sangat being one of the first offices who took on to Archicad, and they saw the merit in how it's differently designed and curated for architects to explore the design possibilities. And we are really happy to share with you that the winner of the competition can also receive an internship at Vastu Shilpa Foundation that will be facilitated by the team here at Graphisoft and Akash, and as we've been in touch with them as well, along with a few other companies in Ahmedabad and Delhi who are willing to open their internship opportunities for the students of the studio. There is a lot of logic and mathematical perceptions that go in identifying these parameters. Having said that, we do not wish the students to dive into coding, but no one is stopping you from any of it. The intent of the studio is to explore all the different softwares that you can through with a support from Archicad that comes to you through its Learn portal. And we'll talk about the Learn portal a little bit later. While we're looking at parametricism, of course, there are a lot of reflections that you can draw in from the works of some of the masters here. But we really want you to have a look at the future of the project and of the site that you're working in. Do not lose out on contextuality. Do not lose out on sustainability, on material explorations, on how AI can drive some of your designs. So while you're donning on the hat of creativity, also don in the values of humility, right? That can help us build in better. And of course, the focus for this entire show is going to be on housing. So while you're working with your BHK calculations that happen in your studios, you would also be applying them from a parametric perspective to look at form generation, customization, and adaptability. Vami mentioned and spoke about material efficiency as well and integration of technology. So let's see how these could work in. The brief that we've shared with all of you, in fact, has would demonstrate through some of the works that have been done on Archicad. For you to also understand and explore the possibilities of the tool and the software as well. But while we are looking at it only from the parametric perspective, we do not want you to lose out on holistic approach, because that is exactly how good designs stand out. And that is also something you may have seen in Sami Padora Associates' works as well. They're very holistic in their approach. Of course, because this is brought to you by Graphisoft, you would know that the software, the lessons and the learnings that are coming to you would otherwise have been worth more than 10,000 rupees. But because this is a very intimate setting of a collaborative studio, that we are allowing only 10 colleges of architecture across the country to join us in this venture. All of it is coming to you free of cost for the entire institute to learn and explore the software, where you would receive direct certifications from the Graphisoft Learn portal as well. And those who are working on the housing studio, who would be, also exploring the different aspects of the design with us, would be receiving participation certificates from ASEG and Ethos along with Graphisoft, while the winners, of course, take back some extra special treats. The submissions and deliverables for this is, of course, in like an archival file format. It's called PLA format for Archicad, where you submit in. It kind of brings in all the different libraries, references, tools, everything else that you worked on for the file. And we will be having presentations. We are happy to share with you that Vami Koticha has agreed to be a jury for this competition, along with Zonke Hoof, who is right now one of the CEOs at Vastu Shilpa Foundation. We will get in touch with you on the third jury member for this competition as well. And it is critical and important that we explore all dimensions of designing. And the prize money, although not really highlighted here, it focuses like you would be receiving the winner would take home 50,000 rupees with Archicad solo subscription commercial license for their internship along with certification. The first prize winner would receive 30,000 rupees, and the second runner-up would receive 15,000 rupees plus certification. We also have a best Archicad BIM model award that is for 5,000 rupee plus a certification. All the studio projects who are joining, all the studios which are joining in this competition, aligning it with their academics, would also receive a scroll of participation from the competition. The schedule for this is really very simple. You would have, like, today's session, although inspirational, was very technical because we spoke about the techniques in application of parametric architecture. And you will see that here we have parameters that define the projects by SP plus A by Vami Koticha coming in. We had Sandor talking and introducing Archicad to everyone, and also he discussed the parametricism and plugins on Graphisoft for us. We would also be hosting like the launch of the brief and the prize announcements is happening right now. We will be discussing the first exercise, which is the design exercise, where we talk about the vision, and we'll share a square one certificate with, a square one assignment with everyone. But it will come in time because we don't want to bombard you with too many information and instructions here. We'll have sessions on design communication and how to present yourself on an online medium. That is open for all. We'll discuss site analysis, master planning, floor plan and services, and all of these with our mentor, Dwaipayan Chakravarti. All of you would receive access to the Learn portal, where you have to upload your college ID, and we've shared the names of the institute with Sandor and the team in Singapore, who will be reviewing and giving you access into the backend. And each of these segments actually have lessons that you could learn and understand. Of course, YouTube is another medium that you could use, but it's not just limited to self-paced learning that you see here. We will also be hosting an online workshop to explore parametricism on 4th of September. These two sessions on 4th and 18th are the only ones which will clash with your academic schedule. Otherwise, the rest of the sessions have been planned for Saturdays. And with this, I sincerely thank you for joining us here and for this entire large August gathering. And we will stay in touch first with the faculty members because we wish to discuss a few details and tie a few loose ends with them this Monday. 2:30 is when we are proposing the meetup, and the design sessions will all happen on the 24th. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sandor. Thank you, Akash, for being with us and for trusting us with the huge responsibility of doing a good job with this competition.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure.
Sonam, and it was, yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone. If any of the participants would like to unmute and ask questions, you can do that if there are questions. Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot, Bijal. I do hope the students have found inspiration through the sessions, and we'll stay in touch. All right. Yes, yes. Thanks, Bijal. Anyone else would like to share anything or say anything? Okay, can I request the faculty members to please come to the screen so that we could have one final round of goodbyes before we end the meeting, please? Hi, Shraddhanand, is that you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, can hear you.
So yeah, it was a great session. Thank you.
I see that all the students are here and not just the fourth year housing. Yeah, that's nice. That's great. Thank you. I will stay in touch with you. If there are any comments or questions from your end, please feel free.
Sure. Sure, I will get back to you on any questions.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bijal.
Yeah, Sonam, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, it was a great session. Thank you for motivating me. Ki nahi, Bijal, you have to attend it, वगैरह kind of. And I really appreciate the efforts you had taken. And really, I would have regretted अगर मैंने ये miss किया होता था तो session. You know, it's a wonderful session. I was only talking to the students. See, this is a kind of future. And you have to learn it. You know, the bottom line is like, anyways, you have to learn it. So yeah, it is a kind of a very nice session, really. So I do appreciate for your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, then, since we do not have any more videos popping up, I would say thank you, and we'll stay in touch. We'll meet all the faculty members on Monday.